At first glance, Jason Corbett's life looked like a second chance unfolding. A widowed father from Limerick, Ireland, who had lost his wife to a sudden asthma attack in 2006, Jason was trying to rebuild, both for himself and for his two young children, Jack and Sarah. In the chaos of grief and new responsibilities, he hired a 24-year-old American au pair named Molly Martins to help care for the kids. What began as a professional arrangement gradually evolved into something more. By 2011, Jason and Molly were married, and by 2012, the family relocated to the United States to begin their new life together in North Carolina. But beneath the polished exterior of this so-called fresh start, something deeply troubling was brewing. Jason was a quiet, private man. A successful executive at a packaging company, he was described by friends and co-workers as hardworking and devoted to his children. Molly, on the other hand, came from a very different world. Raised in a privileged household, she was the daughter of Thomas Martins, a retired FBI agent. She had grown up in a world where her father's word was law and control wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. When Molly arrived in Jason's life, she brought with her not just a new maternal figure for his children, but a powerful, looming father figure who would prove to be far more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. The move to North Carolina was supposed to be a clean slate, but those close to Jason began to notice changes. Tensions rose within the household. Reports later revealed that the marriage was strained, filled with arguments, jealousy, and accusations. Jason's family in Ireland believed Molly was struggling to adapt to motherhood and resented Jason's close bond with his children, especially his late wife's memory. At one point, Jason even reportedly considered returning to Ireland with the children, a decision that Molly strongly opposed. And she wasn't alone in her resistance. Her father was right behind her. Then came the night of August 2nd, 2015, a night that shattered the illusion of domestic peace forever. Just after 3 a.m., a frantic 911 call came in. On the line was Thomas Martins. He told the dispatcher that he had just hit his son-in-law, claiming Jason had been attacking Molly and that he had to intervene. The call was laced with panic, but also strange calmness. "He's bleeding all over," Thomas said. "I may have killed him." Police arrived at the home to a grisly scene. Jason Corbett lay dead on the bedroom floor, his skull crushed by multiple blows. Nearby lay the murder weapons, an aluminum baseball bat and a decorative concrete paving brick. The forensic evidence was horrifying. Jason had been struck at least 10 times, and the injuries were so severe that parts of his skull were shattered beyond recognition. He was found naked, a detail that would later fuel suspicion about the nature of the attack. Molly and her father both claimed self-defense. They insisted that Jason had been abusive, that he was strangling Molly that night, and that Thomas had only acted to save his daughter's life. But almost immediately, questions began to emerge. Why was Jason naked in his own bedroom at the time of the alleged attack? Why had he been hit so many times with such force? And why had the scene been scrubbed clean by a professional cleaning crew just hours later, before the police could fully investigate? Even more disturbing was what came next. Molly tried to have Jason's body cremated almost immediately after his death, without notifying his family in Ireland. She claimed it was what Jason wanted, but his family didn't buy it. They flew to the US in a panic and were horrified to learn not just of his death, but of the effort to erase the evidence before they could even arrive. An autopsy revealed blunt force trauma as the cause of death, and the evidence painted a picture far more sinister than self-defense. Jason had defensive wounds on his arms and hands, suggesting he tried to shield himself during the attack. Blood spatter indicated he was likely attacked while lying down, not during an upright struggle. and there was no physical evidence on Molly to support her claim that she had been strangled. Prosecutors in North Carolina didn't buy the self-defense story either. They charged both Molly Martins and Thomas Martins with second-degree murder. At trial, the pair stuck to their narrative, painting Jason as a controlling and violent husband, someone who they believed would eventually hurt or even kill Molly. But the evidence and the inconsistencies in their stories told a different story. The prosecution argued that the murder was premeditated, that Jason had been planning to return to Ireland with his kids, and that Molly, fearing she would lose custody and the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to, conspired with her father to stop him permanently. The sheer overkill of the attack, the professional cleanup, the hasty cremation attempts, all pointed to a plan, not a panicked defense. In August 2017, both Molly and her father were found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 to 25 years in prison. For Jason's family, particularly his sister Tracy Lynch, the verdict was a long-awaited measure of justice. But the fight was far from over. In 2020, the North Carolina Supreme Court overturned the convictions, ruling that some testimonies by Jason's children had been improperly excluded during trial. Those children, who had lived through the nightmare, had made statements describing Molly as abusive, controlling, and emotionally unstable. The court ruled this was a violation of due process. In 2023, facing a retrial and overwhelming pressure, Molly Martins and her father entered a plea deal, pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter. Despite the brutality of the killing, they received sentences of just 51 to 74 months. With time served, both were released in mid-2024. They walked free, while Jason remained buried under Irish soil. The reduced sentence sent shockwaves through both the Irish and American public. Jason's family expressed devastation. His children, now teenagers, remain in the care of relatives in Ireland, far removed from the people who ended their father's life. And despite years of trials, appeals, and court proceedings, one truth remains chillingly clear. Jason Corbett was beaten to death in his own home, in his own bed, by the very people who claimed to love him. Jason Corbett's story is a sobering reminder that danger doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it lives under the same roof. He was a devoted father, a widower trying to give his children love and stability, and in the end, he was taken from them in the most brutal way imaginable. Not by a stranger, but by the very people who promised to protect and love them all. Let this case serve as a warning. Trust is powerful, but misplaced trust can be fatal. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We tell these stories not just to remember the victims, but to expose the darkness that too often hides in plain sight. And as always, stay curious and stay safe.